All right. Perfect. We'll start in a minute here. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Hope you're having a great morning. It starts your day. My name is Dr. Mark Bubbs. I am a naturopathic doctor based here in Toronto, Canada, as well as in London, in the UK. I work as a performance nutritionist as well. So with athletes, elite athletes, consulted with Canada Basketball, so our national team, which we were in the World Cup in China last year, which was a great experience, and also consult with other groups like Altus in the US, track and field groups. And so for myself on a day-to-day basis in clinic, I work with elite athletes and I work all the way through the spectrum to the general population, right? And so, you know, in your practice with the people that you work with, whether it's someone who's trying to lose 20, 30 pounds in order to improve their health, or whether it's somebody who's more active and has a goal to compete in a running challenge, a marathon, a triathlon, or whether it's an older individual, right, 60 plus, 70 plus, who's trying to maintain their health and fight off disease and feel their best as they age, protein plays a really key role in all of these areas. Okay. I have 3 little kids at home, 6, 4, and 2. My parents are approaching their mid-70s and 80s, and all the way through that whole spectrum, protein plays a really, really important role. And we're going to explore that today as it relates to an individual's health, as it relates to your performance, whether it's at work, in the boardroom, or in your preferred sporting endeavor, and of course for things like weight loss. So let's get started.
Okay. Sorry, Mark. We need to translate one part by the another. So what you just said is very long. Yeah. I'm trying to repeat that part, but for the following part, we can do a little short.
Keep it. No
okay,
worries.
That's pretty long.
Okay. No worries. I'll keep it short. I didn't realize what we were. Okay.
Yeah.
Should I shoot for like what, 60? Okay, I'll keep it short. Do you want me to redo that? Make it easier for you?
No. I can translate that part, but normally not that long. For
not
the
that long.
No worries. It's short.
No worries.
You can change to
the
first slides. You can change to the first slides.
Go back to the first slide?
Yeah, go back to the first one.
This one?
Yeah. 好，大家早上好，我是 Mark， 我来自多伦多加拿大。我是一个在运动表现、营养方面非常精通的专家。我自己呢在医院里面工作，也在大学和国家队的这个体育运动队来执教。那我自己亲自执教的有加拿大的这个篮球国家队，然后明年的话，我们的篮球国家队也会到中国去参加世界杯的比赛。我相信这一定是一个非常好的体验和旅程。然后我的家里呢有3个孩子。他们分别是6岁、4岁和2岁，然后家里也有老人。那平时呢，我会照顾他们饮食方面的一些需求，给他们一些营养的建议。所以我涉猎的人群呢，不光有运动员以及精英运动员，也有大众的人群。举个典型的例子，就是我的家人，还有我在医院工作的时候，其实患者的这个类型来找到我需要帮助的人的类型是非常多的。有久坐少动的人，有肥胖的人，也有一些身体有疾病的人，他们都会找到我咨询相关的营养的话题。有些人他可能想要减掉20到30斤的这些体重，这些都是我平时会遇到的一些工作上面的问题。好，那接下来的话，我们进入今天的课程，我们重点来讨论关于减重和运动表现，蛋白质的摄入应该关注哪些点。Yeah, we can go for the next one.
Terrific. Well, I'd like to start out the conversation today with a story. And the story is about an ancient Greek Olympian named Milo. Now, he was a famous wrestler, army general, Olympic champion. And there was a certain theme to what made him great. And hopefully by the end of today's lecture, we can really emphasize and explore that theme.
好，那接下来呢，我们进入今天的课程之前，先跟大家分享一个故事。这个故事呢是关于古代奥运著名的一个选手，叫做 Milo。 他是在公元前6世纪的一个运动员，在古希腊时期呢，他是一个著名的摔跤选手，并且有6次蝉联了奥运会的冠军。他同时也是在军队当中任职的一名将军。
All right, let's look at the overview for today. We're going to look at the fundamentals of protein, and then we're going to explore how protein relates to overall health and longevity. From there, a discussion around fat loss and body composition for your clients, and then finally a discussion on athletic performance, whether it's strength or team sport.
好，接下来我们看看今天课程内容。首先呢，我们会跟大家介绍一些基础方面的知识，然后看看蛋白质在整体健康和长寿、寿命延长方面的作用。那接下来我们看看在减脂和体组成方面改善蛋白质有什么作用。最后来关注一下运动表现。
So what does protein do in your body?
那我们提出这样一个问题：蛋白质究竟在身体当中扮演了什么角色？
Protein is effectively the bricks that build everything in your body. So whether it's muscles, immune cells, tissues, enzymes, how the body communicates, protein and the amino acid building blocks are literally the bricks that build everything in your body.
那首先呢，我们要认识到一点呢，就是蛋白质其实是构成我们身体这座房间的砖块，你可以把它理解成砖块。它构建了我们的肌肉细胞，构建了我们的结缔组织，构建了我们免疫细胞，构建了我们的激素以及相关的一些信号分子等等。你可以把它理解成我们身体的一个基本构成元素。
So if we look at the hormone insulin, which is your blood sugar hormone. So when you eat a meal like breakfast, the foods that you've eaten, once they're digested, need to be taken up into the bloodstream. And that's the role of the hormone insulin to signal that. And of course, insulin is made of amino acids, proteins.
那有一个很重要的身体当中的激素呢，是我们的胰岛素。胰岛素它起到了一个很重要的作用，就是将血液当中的糖和营养物质转运到我们的细胞当中，让身体可以使用和吸收。当然呢，胰岛素它其实就是由氨基酸所构成的。
In order to understand protein, we need to appreciate all of the essential amino acids. These are the amino acids that you need to consume from your diet.
那在谈论蛋白质的时候，我们必须了解的是必需氨基酸。那这些现在屏幕上呈现的，就是我们必须通过饮食才能获取的氨基酸。
Now, this mnemonic, this phrase to remember the amino acids, is used in Canada, America, the UK. Private Tim Hall. This phrase helps to remember the 10 essential amino acids. And as you can see on the slide, phenylalanine, valine, threonine, etc. Of course, in Chinese, there may be a different phrase that you use, but it's really important that you remember the essential amino acids because you and your clients will need to consume these from the foods that you eat.
那接下来大家看到屏幕上呢是一些字母的缩写，这些缩写呢在世界范围内，英语国家是广泛使用的，比如说加拿大、美国或英国，人们都会用这种方式去记忆必需氨基酸啊，它是由每一个必需氨基酸的首字母构成的，PVT、TIM 和 HAL 啊这3种，对于我们来说，记忆必需氨基酸是非常重要的。为什么呢？因为这些氨基酸我们必须通过膳食摄取，必须吃食物才能获得这些营养素。
Let's now look at animal protein. So animal protein coming from beef, chicken, fish, or any other animal contains what we call a complete amino acid profile. So it contains all of the essential amino acids that we just looked at. Animal protein also brings on board, I'll let you translate that bit.
OK， 好，我们接下来来看一看这个动物蛋白。动物蛋白呢，它其实来自于任何这个动物，比如说鱼鸡鸭、牛羊等等。那这些动物蛋白，它有一个重要的特点，就是它是完全氨基酸，因为这些氨基酸，因为这一类蛋白质呢，它包含我们所有所必需的氨基酸。
Animal protein also brings on board a lot of vitamins and minerals. This is a point that's often missed or not appreciated by not only clients, but also practitioners and medical professionals. Animal protein brings on board iron, zinc, magnesium, B12, all of these essential micronutrients that we need to support our health.
那同样呢，动物蛋白它还有一个很大的好处，就是它的营养密度很高，它包含了很多的维生素、矿物质等等，而这些优点呢，往往是人们可能会忽视的啊。这些矿物质，比如说有铁、锌、镁、B12等等，它们都是对我们的身体健康非常重要的营养素。
And finally, animal protein does contain cholesterol and varying degrees of saturated fats, depending on the type of animal protein that you consume.
另外呢，动物蛋白当中也会包含胆固醇和饱和脂肪。当然，饱和脂肪的含量要看你吃的是哪一种动物的肉。
Now, when we look at the consumption of something like eggs, this is a common area of confusion for a lot of clients and, again, practitioners. Clients can become concerned with the egg yolk and the cholesterol it contains and that relationship between heart disease, heart attack, and stroke. Now, do egg yolks really increase our risk for cardiovascular events? Well, we see here in this large study, over 177,000 people, that there was no association between the increased intake of cholesterol and adverse events from cardiovascular, heart attacks, strokes, etc.
那接下来我们探讨一个关于鸡蛋的话题。那通常人们都会有这样一种误区，就是吃鸡蛋的时候，如果你吃到了蛋黄，因为蛋黄是包含胆固醇的，当我们吃了蛋黄之后呢，会引起一些健康的风险。但其实我们看到这里有一篇论文，它调查了177000人在50个国家的范围内进行了广泛的调研的结果呢，其实吃鸡蛋的蛋黄并不会增加我们得冠心病啊等等血液和心血管疾病的风险。
And why is this important? Well, the egg is the gold standard protein, and the egg yolk is again like nature's multivitamin, supporting our own health.
为什么不要排斥吃鸡蛋对我们来说很重要？是因为鸡蛋本身它所包含的蛋白质对于人体来讲是一个黄金的标准，它跟人体的氨基酸构成是非常接近的。另外一个就是蛋黄本身是一个营养密度很高的天然的维生素和矿物质的补剂，所以它对我们的健康非常重要。
So to sum up, there's no association between your egg intake and the increases in cholesterol or adverse cardiovascular events like heart attack and stroke. So no connection between egg yolks and heart events.
所以我们稍微总结一下，蛋黄的摄入与你的血脂异常、心脏病、冠心病的风险增加是没有显著性的关联的。
Now let's take a look at vegetable proteins. Vegetable proteins, often referred to today as plant-based proteins, can be very high quality as well. However, it's important to note that they don't contain all of the essential amino acids. Now, that's not necessarily a problem. It just means that we need to combine different types of vegetable proteins. And of course, the one exception for plant-based proteins is soy protein. Soy does contain a complete amino acid profile.
那接下来我们来讨论一下植物蛋白。植物蛋白它有一个特点，就是通常单一的植物蛋白当中并不包含所有的必需氨基酸，但其实呢，这个也不会造成一个太大的问题。那我们可以去做的一种选择，就是将不同的植物蛋白进行混合，来进行相互的这种补充。在植物蛋白当中呢，也有一种植物蛋白是比较特殊的，就是大豆的植物蛋白。这种植物蛋白它是包含完全的所有的必需氨基酸的。
Just like the animal proteins, plant-based proteins, vegetable proteins are very nutrient dense. They also contain a high amount of vitamins, minerals, which are key for health. However, it's important to remember two key exceptions. Iron levels are much lower in plant-based proteins, iron being important for things like energy and red blood cell formation. And vitamin B12 as well is typically found in plant and animal proteins. So those are two key exceptions to keep in your mind when you're working with your clients.
那同样呢，跟动物蛋白一样，植物蛋白也是很高营养密度的这种食物来源，但是有两个是例外的啊。虽然它含有丰富的维生素和矿物，但是两个，一个是铁，一个是维生素 B12，是比较少的。那我们知道铁其实在能量代谢和红细胞生成的过程当中啊都是非常重要的，包括 B12。所以大家在跟自己的客户，尤其是素食客户在一起合作的时候，这一点我们需要格外关注。
Plant-based proteins, unlike animal proteins, do not contain any cholesterol. And the saturated fat amounts in vegetable proteins as well is very low. This doesn't make them either good or bad. It's just simply the profile of that food. That plant-based protein does not contain cholesterol and it has lower amounts of saturated fat.
那在胆固醇方面呢，植物类的这种蛋白它是不包含的。而饱和脂肪呢，它的含量会更低，这两个特征并没有说哪一种蛋白质会更好，它只是很客观地反映了这种食物来源蛋白质的相关的包含营养物质的区别而已。
Now, if we look a little bit deeper into soy protein and we compare it to animal protein for building muscle mass and strength, which again is not just for the individual who wants to build a lot of muscle, but important for all adults, even more important as we age to protect against losing muscle mass. And we see that soy protein matches up very well, is very similar to all of the animal proteins. And this is a key point because it's only soy that's going to match up that well. The other plant-based proteins are going to be inferior compared to soy.
那在这篇论文里呢，我们可以看到作者对大豆蛋白和乳清蛋白进行了一个比较，它比较的主要是在增肌和减脂方面的这个效果。那这里呢，我们不是说一定是运动员要尝试增肌和减脂的这种作用，其实对于大众普通人群来说也是一样的。那在比较之后呢，发现这两种蛋白质的效果是非常类似。在这个地方大家要关注的是特指大豆蛋白。其他的这种植物蛋白呢，可能效果就会没有这么好。
So a take-home message here is that if you do choose another vegetable protein or plant-based protein, and it's not soy, make sure there's a combination of proteins. So pea plus rice or pea plus hemp, that combination is important.
所以我们可以看到了，在这里特指的是大豆蛋白，而如果你吃的是其他类型的植物蛋白的话，也没有关系，我们可以通过不同类型植物蛋白的搭配来解决必需氨基酸不完整的这种情况。比如说，我们可以把豆类和谷物类的这个植物蛋白进行一些混合搭配。
All right, to reinforce this idea of combining proteins, so we know that vegetable-based proteins are going to be inferior to animal because they don't contain that complete amino acid profile, those essential amino acids we saw earlier. And so an easy way to remember how to make sure if you're a vegetarian or following more of a plant-based diet is to combine protein sources. So as you can see in the graphic, a grain plus a legume plus a nut, seed, or soy. Legumes are typically low in methionine, the amino acid methionine, and grains are low in lysine.
那正如我们刚才提到的，在摄入植物蛋白的时候，需要特别考虑的是植物蛋白食物品类之间的这种搭配，就是因为它的各个类别之内的植物蛋白的必需氨基酸并不是完整的。那给大家一个搭配的建议，就是我们可以将来自于植物蛋白的食物分为3类：谷物、豆类和坚果进行混合的搭配。我们可以看到的是，豆类呢，在单氨酸含量是比较低的，而谷物呢，在赖氨酸含量方面也是比较低的。
So if we look at some areas of potential challenges, potential problems that come up, again, today we see plant-based diets becoming more and more popular. And so certain items like a jackfruit sandwich have become popular to replace, let's say, an animal protein, in this example, a beef burger. So how does a jackfruit compare to a regular hamburger?
那我们可以看到了，在动物蛋白的摄入过程当中，其实是存在一定的潜在风险的。所以现在呢，有越来越多的人用这种新的叫 jackfruit 三明治来代替以前以动物蛋白为主的三明治。那我们就来看看这两种食物它们之间究竟会存在什么样的差异。
As we can see here, if we compare a jackfruit burger to either a regular burger or pork-based pulled pork burger, we see here that in the jackfruit only contains 2.4 grams of protein. The jackfruit only contains 2.4 grams of protein per cup. And it also contains almost 40 grams of carbohydrate.
那一个很重要的区别，我们可以从食品标签的数据上看到，在这种素食的汉堡或三明治当中呢，它的蛋白质含量其实是很低的，只有2.4克，而另外一方面呢，它的总的碳水化合物的含量居然有40克这么多。
This is important because if we compare this to pork or beef, a similar serving would provide 20 to 25 grams of protein, so 10 times as much protein, and only provide 1 or 2 grams of carbohydrate. And so it's a very different nutrient profile between these two things.
那当我们去看这种传统的用牛肉或者是猪肉做的三明治或汉堡的时候，你会发现，在这种传统汉堡当中，它的蛋白质含量会高很多。通常一份的话，你可以获得20到25克的蛋白质，而碳水的含量呢，会远远低于现在的40克。
So why is this important? Well, today's talk is all about protein. And so for your clients or yourselves, we want to try to increase the amount of protein if someone is consuming a plant-based food like a jackfruit burger. And in the following slides, we'll explore how to do that.
那为什么这个很重要呢？也正切合了今天的主题。我们今天讨论的就是蛋白质的摄入对于我们整体的健康和运动表现的影响。那接下来呢，我们就来看看如何来应对这种情况。
All right, before we discuss specifics on the amounts of protein you need for health, we're going to look at metabolism. How does protein go from your mouth to the tissues? Now, there's two situations we want you to consider. The first is when you're in the fed state. The fed state means you've consumed a meal, and so those essential amino acids, and all amino acids rather, so all the amino acids can either be used to make protein, they can be used for protein synthesis to build muscles, they can be used for glucose. So again, they can be used to build tissues, so enzymes, tissues, etc. They can be used to build muscle. They can be used as a fuel source.
那我们来看一下这个氨基酸在身体当中的一些代谢这个代谢呢，我们从2个方面来看。第一个方面呢是在饱腹的时候，另外一个呢是在空腹的时候。那在饱腹的时候呢，我们摄入了氨基酸之后，我们的蛋白质会分解为氨基酸氨基酸呢，它在身体当中会有几种类型的这个功能。比如说第一个，它是会构建我们的身体的成分构建我们的肌细胞等等。那第二个呢，它会构建成我们的免疫系统的这些免疫细胞。然后呢，还有就是它可以进行一些糖医生的作用，或者直接进行供能。
Now, in the fasted state, things are different. In the fasted state, protein is going to be more likely to be used as a glucose fuel source. Again, in the fed state, protein is likely going to be building muscle and building tissues. In the fasted state, it's going to support muscle and tissues, but preferentially, it's going to be certain amino acids are going to be converted to glucose for fuel. So someone who's on a higher protein diet can use that protein as an energy source.
但是空腹的时候的情况就会有一些变化了。我们来看看，当空腹的时候，氨基酸它用作构成身体的细胞或成分的这个作用会比例降低， 而它为身体去供能或者转化为葡萄糖，产生糖异生作用来为身体供能的比例会增加。
And the last point is that one of the key signals to tell the body whether to use protein to build tissues versus burn protein for energy is the hormone insulin. You can see in the fed state, insulin is high, and the corollary hormone, the opposing hormone, glucagon, is low. And in the fasted state, when you're not eating, insulin is low and glucagon is high. That is the signal to direct the protein.
还有一个重要的信息想跟大家一起分享的，就是身体是如何进行选择的，究竟是用蛋白质来供能，还是用它来构建我们的身体？这其中一个很重要的激素就是我们的胰岛素。那当我们饱腹的时候呢，胰岛素的水平是比较高的，这个时候胰岛素高的水平会使得蛋白质所分解出来的氨基酸更倾向于去构建身体的成分。而当我们空腹的时候，胰岛素的水平是低的，而胰高血糖素的水平是胰岛素的水平是低的，而胰高血糖素的水平是上升的。在这个时候呢，身体更倾向用氨基酸来为我们进行供能，而不是构建身体。
All right, when we look at protein turnover, if we continue this discussion on consuming a food, so you consume your meals, the proteins get broken down into amino acids. You can see at the bottom of the slide, once they are digested, your body breaks down the protein into these single amino acids. And the example I use is like a pearl necklace. So if the entire necklace is a protein, the individual pearls are the amino acids. And when your body breaks down the food that you eat, once it's into your system, you have individual amino acids that will then be used to build tissue.
那接下来我们来看看我们是如何消化和吸收我们的蛋白质的。那当我们吃掉蛋白质呢，蛋白质会进入到身体当中，然后被分解为氨基酸。大家可以把这个过程想象成，本来你戴了一个珍珠的项链，这个项链呢，它就是我们的蛋白质，而分解之后呢，项链上面一颗一颗的珍珠就是氨基酸。这个过程就好像我们把项链拆散，然后得到一颗一颗的珍珠，就是得到我们一个个单独分离的氨基酸。
And so we have a pool of amino acids. If you consume enough to meet your demands, you'll have enough amino acids, proteins, or as I called them before, bricks to build tissue. If you don't consume enough protein and you have higher demands because of your exercise or poor health, this is when problems are going to start.
那当这些蛋白质被消化分解为氨基酸之后呢，会在我们的身体当中形成一个氨基酸库。那这个时候，身体对于能量的需求，其实是对氨基酸的去向产生了一个很大的影响。当我们的身体需要供能，氨基酸更倾向于去供能；而当我们的身体呢不再运动不再需要供能的时候，氨基酸会更倾向于去构建我们的身体。
All right, so now is the question. How much protein do you need to consume in one day?
好，接下来我们的问题是我们每天究竟需要摄入多少蛋白质？
Well, let's start by looking at our clients who are looking to support their health and to improve longevity first.
首先我们来看看希望通过摄入蛋白质来改善健康和更加长寿的人群。
So the blue zones around the world are the areas where people live the longest. We have the most centenarians, people living to 100 or longer, in places like Loma Linda, California, Nicoya, Costa Rica, Sardinia in Italy, Icaria in Greece, Okinawa in Japan.
那在现在的这张地图上，大家可以看到我们标记了5个地区这些地区的人呢，他们的寿命是显著高于世界其他地区的。那比如说洛马林达尼科亚半岛、萨丁岛伊卡利亚岛和冲绳。
Now in the blue zones, exercise is a common factor for their health. Things like community is a common factor for their health, positive attitude, but also diet.
那在这些地区生活的人们呢，他们通常具有这样的一些习惯，比如说运动，很自然的在生活当中融入一些规律的运动。 有良好的社交和社会的关系，正确的理念，但其中有一个很重要的因素，就是他们科学的膳食模式。
And so when we look at this idea of longevity, it's not just how many years you live, which is called our lifespan. Health span is a new term, which means the years that you live, how healthy, how are you able to maintain your individuality, your ability to walk and move and take care of yourself as you get to 60, 70, 80. And so adopting a good diet, like the ideal amount of protein, is how we can increase one's health span, or the amount of years in which you live very healthily.
好，那接下来我们讨论一个寿命和整个生命长度的两个概念之间的区别。那寿命呢，其实是我们真正可以有品质的生活的时间，而生命长度呢，就是你在这个世界上待多久。那寿命它意味着在你存活在这个世界上的时候，你可以很好的去应对和享受生活，你可以正常的走路，正常的参与社会和家人之间的这些活动，这个是一个健康的寿命的状态。
The amount of protein that you eat in a day plays a very big role in increasing your health span.
而我们每一天究竟吃了多少蛋白质这件事儿呢，对于寿命、健康的寿命的长度影响是非常大的。
So let's start with what the recommended daily allowance is for protein. What are the government or institution suggestions for protein intake?
好，接下来我们看看蛋白质的推荐摄入量，每日摄入量是多少啊？这些数据呢是来自于一些政府机构啊，或者是相关的科研机构。
So across Canada and the US, UK, and Europe, and I'm sure similarly in Asia, the recommended dietary allowance for protein is only 0.8 grams per kilogram body weight per day.
那在美国也好，加拿大也好，我相信在亚洲的很多国家也是一样的标准，就是政府推荐呢，每天每公斤体重摄入蛋白质是0.8克。
Now this isn't a lot of protein, and we're going to examine now how we can increase that amount to support better health and performance.
但其实在我看来呢，这个摄入量并不是很高。那接下来我们也会讨论如何通过增加蛋白质的摄入来改善我们整体的健康水平。
So again, why protein for longevity? How does protein help you to live longer? Well, there's a few different factors. It helps to maintain muscle mass and build muscle mass. Leg strength is strongly associated with healthy aging, right? How strong your legs are. VO2 max, your aerobic capacity, aerobic fitness, also strongly associated with longevity. And finally, grip strength. How strong the grip is another key indicator of longevity, and protein impacts all four of those areas.
那我们为什么鼓励大家去增加蛋白质的摄入量呢？是因为蛋白质跟我们健康的寿命是非常相关的。我们知道影响到健康寿命的有4个因素啊，其中有4个因素分别是肌肉的质量啊、腿部的力量、最大摄氧量和你的握力。那蛋白质的摄入和这4个因素都是息息相关的。
So before we give you the recommended amount, I want to now discuss what's called age-related sarcopenia, or in common language, the age-related decline in muscle.
那在我们真正给大家我所建议的每日蛋白质摄入量之前呢，我们先想跟大家去探讨一个关于什么是老年性肌少症的话题。
So age-related sarcopenia is the decline of muscle as we get older. And that reduction in your muscle mass increases an individual's risk of falling and fractures. And of course, if you break your hip when you're 60 or 70 or 80, that really increases the comorbidity. So other diseases you might then succumb to, diabetes, heart disease, etc. and also increases mortality.
好，那我们先定义一下，老年性呢肌肉衰减症其实就是随着你的衰老，肌肉逐渐流失的这样的一个现象。那这种现象呢，它会导致我们生活的基本的这个能力，尤其是摔倒的风险会增加。那摔倒风险增加呢，它其实是很大的一个问题。比如说我们摔倒之后损伤了自己的髋关节，那髋关节损伤之后，它会长期卧床，产生一些并发症的这种发生。比如说它会增加我们冠心病、糖尿病等等这些慢性疾病的风险的增加的概率，同时呢也会增加我们的全因死亡率。
Protein plays a key role in preventing muscle mass decline and strength decline.
而我们知道蛋白质呢，它在抵抗肌肉减少这一方面，以及肌力减少的这方面是非常重要的。
When we look at some of the statistics around sarcopenia, we see that 20% of the US population will be struggling with this by the year 2050, 25 and 28% in Canada and Mexico. And again, similar percentages likely in Asian countries like China.
那我们来看看一些参考的这个统计数据。那到2050年，根据预测，美国人口20%，加拿大呢25%，以及墨西哥28%，都会超过这个65岁。当然，我们也知道，中国包括亚洲很多国家都在逐步进入一个老龄化的社会。
I think in traditional cultures and in Asia, in China, there is more movement in the day-to-day activity and traditional diet as well, which will help to prevent this. But today's environment of connectivity and being on the internet and having a sedentary life where we sit a lot is going to increase our risks of developing this condition.
我们都知道呢，其实在中国现在越来越多的人们会习惯于每天有更多的运动量，以及中国本身的这种饮食文化当中是偏向于健康的。但是在很多欧美国家比如说在 Mark 生活的这个地方，人们会更多的去使用互联网等等，天天就坐着这样的一种生活习惯，对于他们来讲，这种风险是特别值得引起关注的。
When we look at the healthcare costs, how much does it cost our governments to deal with age-related sarcopenia, so the loss of muscle mass, and then all of the conditions that are associated with it? We see that it makes up a huge percentage of the healthcare bill. And again, this would be similar US, Canada, Europe, Asia.
那我们再来看看每年社会会因为这个问题支出多少成本当它全部加在一起的时候，我们可以看到它在全部社会医疗支出当中占到的比例有 1.5%， 这是很多的。那这种情况呢，其实在欧洲、美国、亚洲以及加拿大的很多地方都是同样的问题。
And we see now, what is that amount? I've been waiting and waiting to tell you this amount that we're going to aim for. But I want to highlight that the research now we see amongst the best protein researchers in the world, like Stu Phillips at McMaster University, are suggesting that we increase that RDA. So that 0.8 grams per kilogram per day, that's the general suggestion. That's not high enough for health and longevity.
那究竟我们应该每天摄入多少的量呢？大家一定对这个问题的答案等待了很久。那我们也找到了这个蛋白质摄入领域的世界顶尖级的专家Stoughton M. Phillips 他们的团队通过研究，他其实是建议政府应该把蛋白质每日建议摄入量 RDA 的值调高，因为 0.8 克每公斤体重每天的话，并不足以去改善我们的肌力水平、肌肉水平和我们健康寿命的水平。
And so, as I mentioned previously, protein is key, as well as exercise. So you do need to still have the movement and the exercise, which is great that you're at the IDEA China conference because you are an exercise professional or enthusiast. And we also need the protein intake because, as I mentioned, it does two things. Protein intake stimulates muscle protein building, but it also prevents breakdown.
好，那除了这个蛋白质本身的摄入以外呢，其实我们还需要关注的是训练和运动。我很高兴大家可以参加 IDEA 这样的峰会。我相信参加的大部分人呢，也是健康健身方面的从业者、教练或者是爱好者。那除了这个蛋白质摄入之外呢，训练本身也可以去抵抗我们的肌肉流失这种现象。
So back to this question, how much protein should an older individual, adults and older individuals, consume on a daily basis?
好，我们回到这个问题，就是老年人的每日蛋白质的摄入量应该是多少？
Let's answer the question for you. The dose, the amount we want to aim for, is 1.2 grams per kilogram body weight per day. So 1.2 grams multiplied by your client's body weight, let's say it's 60 kilograms, would then equal the amount of grams of protein in a day. So we want to achieve that daily intake, and we want to divide it over the day.
好，我们直接给大家这个答案，就是1.2克每公斤体重每天。如果你的客户假设是60公斤的体重的话，我们就用1.2乘以60等于72克。那这些蛋白质就是他每天应该摄入的量。
Now, the question is, if this is the amount of protein that's for our best health, why don't older adults eat that much protein?
好，那既然这么多的量是我们维持身体健康所必须的，那为什么老年人不能摄入过多呢？
Well, another expert in protein and older individuals is Dr. Theo Spoglu from Leeds Beckett University. And the main reasons why older adults don't eat enough protein is number one, appetite. They feel full. Number two is dentition. If the teeth are not strong, the desire to eat protein might be lower. Another one is a fear of cholesterol. We know today that higher cholesterol doesn't lead to more heart events, but this old information can still linger in folks. And some people just don't want to cook. It's too much effort. So these are the common reasons why people don't consume, older individuals don't consume enough protein.
那前面我们知道，其实老年人也应该摄入足够的蛋白质的，但是现实当中人们却没有吃这么多。我们可以从4个角度来解释这个现象。那这些答案呢，来自于 Dr. Soy Protein， 他是 Leeds 大学很著名的一个学者。他总结了4个原因。第一个呢是食欲，老年人本身整体的吃饭的这个欲望就比较低。那第二个呢是牙的问题。老了之后呢，牙齿的这个咀嚼能力都会下降，所以吃肉吃蛋白质对于他们来说可能比较困难。第三个呢是害怕胆固醇，因为这其实是一个非常传统的，但是现在看来可能是错误的一个观点。其实最新的很多研究都表明，胆固醇它其实跟我们冠心病、心血管疾病的发生相关性并不是很高，这是第3点。第4点呢，就是老年人不太想做饭所以这些原因导致了老年人的总体蛋白质摄入量是不够的。
Now, if we look at the meals of the day, in terms of protein consumption, what meal do we consume the least amount of protein? That's where we want to start with our clients.
好，当我们来看一天当中蛋白质的整个这个不同的饭点的摄入分布我们可以看到早餐的蛋白质摄入量是最少的，这也是客户一天当中吃到的第一顿饭。
As you can see from the graph, lunch and dinner is when we get the most amount of protein. And of course, as you can also see, breakfast is the meal where we get the least amount of protein. And so breakfast is a great place to start to focus on with your clients. And the goal is to achieve 20 grams at breakfast.
所以我们可以看到这个统计数据说明在午餐和晚餐的时候，蛋白质摄入量是比较高的，而早餐呢，目前只有低于15克的这么一个量。所以当我们想要去改善一个客户的蛋白质摄入量的时候，我们可以先尝试从早餐开始， 我们的目标呢是让早餐的蛋白质摄入量大概达到20克。
All right, so for longevity and health, our adult clients who want to be healthy, our older clients who want to support healthy aging, we want to summarize here. So the total protein for the day, 1.2 grams per kilogram per day. And of course, a minimum of 20 grams per meal. Protein timing, spread it through the day, and protein type, consume a wide variety of different proteins.
好，我们现在呢，把针对于老年人想要通过摄取蛋白质来增强他的肌肉量、肌力和他整体的健康水平的话，总结一下，他们需要在这几方面做出准备。那第一个呢，就是蛋白质的总摄入量1.2克每公斤，体重每天。那这个量呢，通常我们会通过每顿饭摄入20克来达到。这是第一点。第二点的话，我们希望蛋白质的摄入在一天当中每一餐都均匀的获取。最后呢，就是蛋白质的类型需要是好的，并且是多样的蛋白质食物来源。
And a quick tip for the amount of protein that a client should consume in a meal, if you take the size and thickness of your palm, for men, that equals about 30 to 40 grams of protein, and for women, 20 to 30 grams.
那我们来看看这个蛋白质究竟吃多少，它这个体积有多大。大家可以用自己的手掌来看一下，你手掌的这个面积及你手掌的厚度所对应的这么一块肉。如果是男性的手，它大概这样一块肉会包含30到40克的蛋白质；如果是女生的手的话，它通常包含20到30克的蛋白质。
Okay, let's now look at protein intake and how it impacts body composition and weight loss.
好，那接下来我们看看蛋白质的摄入对体成分的改善和减重有什么作用。
A few years ago in America, there was a show called The Biggest Loser. And these are individuals who were losing hundreds of pounds over a series of a few months.
那几年前呢，美国有一个很著名的电视节目叫做《超级减肥王》。那《超级减肥王》当中有很多选手，他们在几个月的时间内，大概会减掉接近100斤的这个体重。
Now, after losing hundreds of pounds, scientists wanted to know, over time, 6 years later, how are these clients doing? Did they maintain the weight loss, and was there an impact on their metabolism?
那接下来呢，就有人会好奇，那这些人在减掉了100多斤，甚至是几百斤的重量之后，在接下来的6年里面，他们是不是还可以保持这样的体重？
So we'll circle back to the answer at the end of this section.
我们对于这个问题的答案，在本章结束的时候会给大家。
So in order to appreciate weight loss, to support weight loss in your clients, we have to understand the energy balance equation.
那为了更好的去理解客户的这个体重管理和减重的过程，我们首先需要关注的一个概念就是能量的平衡。
The energy in comes from the food that we consume. Now that's influenced by our appetite, the foods around us. So the food environment in China is very different than the food environment in America. It's influenced by food reward. So those processed snacks, how they impact our brains and make us want to crave more food. And also our psychology, our mental state of happiness or mood.
那首先呢，我们来看看能量摄入这方面。能量摄入的多少其实是由4个因素所决定的。第一个呢，就是我们的食欲，我们想不想吃这个东西。那第二个呢，是食物的环境，就是在我们身边大概会出现什么样的食物。比如说呢，在中国和美国之间，食物的环境差异就会很大。第三个是食物奖励。什么是食物奖励呢？就是当我们吃完食物之后呢，反馈到大脑的这种奖励机制。这种奖励机制呢，通常会造成我们对于食物的一些渴望的感觉。第4个是我们现在的吃食物的时候的心理状态。你的心理呢是开心的、压抑的还是悲伤的，这些都会影响到我们总体的能量摄入。
Now, the energy in has to be balanced with the energy out. And of course, if we're trying to lose weight, the energy in needs to be less than the energy out.
那通常我们都会尝试去保证能量的进出是平衡的，但如果你是想要减低体重的话，我们会让能量的摄入少于能量的输出。
If we look at the energy out, there's 4 main factors. Your metabolism, called resting metabolic rate, your activity levels, how much exercise you do. Number 3 is called NEAT. It's a scientific term for the activity you get from walking and moving around your regular day. And the final one there, TEF, that's the amount of calories it costs your body just to eat your food.
那在能量的消耗和使用方面呢，也有4个相应的因素。第一个影响因素是我们本身的代谢能力比如说静息代谢率。第二个呢是运动消耗，你每天会花多少时间来进行训练。第三个是非运动消耗，这其实是一个科学的术语，这个术语表达的就是我们日常生活，比如说走路或者做一些基本的工作和日常动作所带来的能量消耗。那第4个呢就是食物热效应，食物热效应呢是我们消化食物本身代谢消化所需要耗去的能量。
Now, the most important factor in the energy out is the metabolism, the RMR.
在这4个因素当中，最重要的影响能量输出的是第一个因素，我们的静息代谢率。
The RMR, the metabolism, actually accounts for 66% of all the calories you and your clients burn.
那在4种能量输出的途径当中呢，静息代谢这一项它大概会占到66%的比例。
So, how does protein support fat loss?
好，我们来看看蛋白质是如何帮助我们减脂的。
Well, first, protein is important for satiety. It helps to keep you full. So if our clients are eating meals that don't have enough protein at breakfast, enough protein at lunch, enough protein at dinner, they're more likely to snack between meals.
蛋白质的一个很重要的作用，它可以提高我们的饱腹感。蛋白质比其他食物能更好的提供饱腹感。如果说你的客户在早餐的时候没有吃足够的蛋白质的话，你会发现他在2餐之间有更高的可能性去吃一些零食或者是甜点。
They're also more likely to crave sugary snacks. And so blood sugars will be going up and down throughout the day, impacting energy levels and focus as well.
所以呢，当你本身摄入蛋白质不足的时候，容易产生饥饿的这个瞬间呢，它也会激发我们对糖的渴望。
Next is the thermic effect of food. And this was in the energy outside. And again, it's the amount of calories when you eat a food, the amount of calories your digestive system has to use to simply process and digest that food.
Yeah. 那接下来呢，就是食物热效应。食物热效应其实就是我们的消化系统在我们吃下去食物之后，把它消化吸收的整个代谢过程需要所消耗的能量。
The important message here is that protein has a much higher thermic effect of food, which means it costs 3 to 4 times as many calories compared to carbohydrates and fats to simply metabolize the protein that you eat.
那这里很重要的一点呢，就是蛋白质这种食物，它会消耗更多的食物热效应，也就是我们的身体的胃肠道系统需要花大概3到4倍的更多的能量来消化蛋白质。
To sum up, eating more protein alone burns more calories.
所以总结一下，很简单的一个结论呢，就是你仅仅是多吃了一些蛋白质，就会增加你总的能量消耗。
Next, let's look at food reward.
接
Food
下来我们看看
reward.
食物奖励。Yeah, it's fine, done.
Snack foods have been made to have the right amount of crunch, salt, and sugar to stimulate the brain to want to consume more.
那通常的零食当中都包含很多的糖啊、脂肪或者是盐，那这些成分都是在奖励我们的大脑，让它更想去吃更多的这一类食物。
Now, this leads to us consuming more and more and more calories from processed foods.
而这种奖励机制呢，会使得我们吃下更多的深加工食品。
These processed foods are also very nutrient poor. They don't contain a lot of vitamins and minerals.
而这些深加工的食物呢，通常它们的营养密度也是比较低的，它们所包含的维生素和矿物质非常的少。
The important message, again, for you as the trainer and for our clients is that eating more protein helps to limit the amount of cravings for a lot of these snack foods and sugary foods.
所以对于我们作为一个教练和我们的客户来讲，这个信息的价值在于吃更多的蛋白质可以降低我们对食物的渴望，而降低食物渴望呢，可以让我们吃更少的零食，从而使得热量的摄入得到一定程度的限制。
And as I alluded to, the last part here is nutrient density. When you eat more protein, you get an increase in the amount of vitamins, minerals, and important nutrients like omega-3s in your diet.
那另外一个呢，就是当我们吃富含蛋白质的食物的时候，通常这一类食物的营养密度也是很高的。比如说这一类食物呢，会富含维生素、矿物质、电解质啊，尤其是胶原蛋白和欧米伽3的多不饱和脂肪酸。
Now, what is the problem again with the current recommendation for protein? 0.8 grams per kilogram per day as it relates to weight loss.
那我们来看看现在膳食指南当中所给出的0.8克每公斤体重每天的摄入量，它的问题究竟出在哪里？尤其话我们会针对减重这个话题来进行分享。
Now, in this example, an 80 kilogram female, if she follows the government advice, the institution advice to consume 0.8 grams of protein, she will consume 64 grams per day.
比如我们做一个简单的算术题，如果她是一个女性客户，80公斤，然后每天呢她的热量摄入目标是2000千卡，她如果按照政府所推荐的0.8克每公斤体重每天的摄入量来摄入的话，她需要摄入64克的蛋白质。
Now, 64 grams of protein is only 256 calories. And of course, the recommendation for women is to consume 2,000 calories per day.
而64克的蛋白质呢，对于一个每天摄入目标为2000千卡的女性来说，它只是其中的256千卡。
So where does she get the rest of her calories from?
所以她应该从什么其他的地方来获取剩余的热量呢？
Well, the recommendations for fat are also set at 30% of caloric intake. So if you look at the second line down, 30% of a 2,000 calorie diet is 600 calories from fat.
而膳食指南当中对于脂肪的摄入也是有一个界限的啊，它通常允许不要超过30%的每天总摄入热量。如果我们用30%乘以2000千卡的话，是600千卡，这个时候所对应的脂肪是67克。
So we have a female client in this example who's trying to lose weight. The recommendation is 2,000 calories per day. And we can see here that once we subtract the 250 calories from protein and the 600 calories from fats, we are left with 1,144 calories that still need to be consumed from carbohydrates. So how many is that in a day?
所以我们减掉了刚才的这个蛋白质和脂肪的摄入量之后，根据膳食指南，剩下的这些热量甚至高达1144千卡。所以这个时候呢，这些热量我们只能通过碳水化合物来摄入。
Based on these recommendations, if our clients follow the guidelines and consume 2,000 calories, 0.8 grams of protein per day, 30% from fat per day, they're left with consuming 286 grams of carbohydrates per day.
所以，如果我们严格按照膳食指南的要求来吃0.8克每公斤体重每天的蛋白质摄入和30%总热量的脂肪摄入，那剩下的286克碳水化合物，剩下的热量我们都需要通过286克的碳水化合物来摄入。
What does 286 grams of carbohydrates look like? I've shown you here in the slide. All of that food would equal 286 grams of carbohydrates.
那究竟多少食物才是286克碳水化合物呢？我在底下的图片当中给大家呈现了，这些食物加在一起，它们所包含的碳水是有286克。
So why do we have a weight gain problem in our society and around the world? Well, this is far too many carbohydrates for the general public to be consuming in one day and too little protein.
那我们现在就解释了为什么在美国和加拿大这样的社会有大量的肥胖问题，就是因为我们每一天根据膳食指南的要求会摄入太多的碳水，而摄入太少的蛋白质。
Now remember, we're talking about a client here who needs to lose 20, 30, or 40 pounds. We're not talking about athletes.
好，大家要记住一点，就是我们的讨论背景在这里所针对的是你想要减掉20斤、30斤的这一类减重的人群，而不是针对于运动员。
So, how much protein should someone who's trying to lose weight eat in a day?
那如果有人想要去减重、减脂的话，他每天应该吃多少蛋白质呢？
Well, this is where now we have a larger range. So the scientific evidence shows that you can start from the 1.2 grams per kilogram per day we mentioned previously, and you can increase all the way up to 2.2 grams per kilogram per day.
在这里我们可以看到一个很宽泛的范围啊，你可以从这个底线1.2克每公斤体重每天来吃，你也可以一路上升到2.2克每公斤体重每天。
Now, what about if we have a client who's more advanced, who's already somewhat lean, who wants to lose more weight, wants to get leaner? So a fit individual who wants to get leaner.
那换另外一种情况，就是这个人他本身已经很健壮了啊，但是他还想更进一步的去减少体脂，这个时候会是什么样子？
Does the protein requirement change when you are in this scenario, a fit person trying to get even leaner?
那跟刚才这个大众人群想要去减重，和现在的健壮的本身身体很健康的这群人想要减脂，我们的数字会有变化吗？
Well, the research we see now, and often we'll see this in the physique or bodybuilding community, or if you have a client who's already fit and trying to lose weight, would be to consume 2.3 to 3.1 grams per kilogram per day based on fat-free mass. So for this one, it's based on the amount of lean tissue in the client.
所以我们可以看到这个数字是不一样的啊。这样高剂量的蛋白质摄入推荐量，我们通常会在健美人群或者是非常狂热的这种健身爱好者人群当中看到。那这里呢是2.3到3.1啊，这个是基于我们的瘦体重。那瘦体重呢，就是把我们体重当中所有的脂肪都去掉这部分身体的重量。
Now let me re-emphasize. These last two slides are for fit clients who want to get even leaner, for clients who are bodybuilders or fitness competitors. This is not for the client who wants to lose 20 or 30 pounds.
那在这一页和上一页的这个信息，我们想跟大家再强调、重申的一点就是，这些数据是推荐给健美运动员，或者是他本身已经健身的水平已经很高了。而不是大众人群想要减掉20或30斤的这群人。
So if we look at, again, elite bodybuilders, and we look at their protein intake, these are national level winners, male and female. We see that the men consume 3 grams per kilogram per day and the women 2.7. This is a very, very high amount.
那接下来我们看到的这张表格呢，是针对于精英级别的健美运动员。那这一群受试者，他们通常都是国家的这个冠军级的这个选手的水平。那在这里我们可以看到，对于男性来说，它的数值会达到3克每公斤体重每天；女性的话是2.7克每公斤体重每天。这个数据是非常高的。
So again, these high amounts of protein, which are based on fat-free mass, not total body weight, are specific for that fit client trying to get very fit or that bodybuilder client that you might have.
所以我们再次强调一下，这个数据呢，它是基于你的受体重所计算的，而且呢，它针对的人群一定是健美运动员或者是本身的健身水平、体适能水平很高的这群人。
Now, a question I often get from clients is, can eating too much protein make me gain weight?
那这里呢是一个我经常会被客户问到的问题：如果吃过多的蛋白质会发胖吗？
A fantastic study performed a few years ago had one group consume a very high protein diet, 4.4 grams per kilogram per day.
那在几年前有这样一篇研究，他去测试了一下，让受试者呢吃很高剂量的蛋白质，4.4克，那这个是超过我们膳食指南0.8克5倍以上的这样的一个值。
So this group, consuming over 4 grams per kilogram per day of protein, was consuming 800 calories above their needs.
那吃这么多的蛋白质会导致受试者大概每天会超过他们身体所需热量的800千卡啊，它会有这么多的热量盈余。
Now, because the extra calories were coming from protein, interestingly in this study, that did not result in increasing weight or body fat.
那因为这些盈余的热量呢，都是来自于蛋白质这种营养物质，所以研究得出了一个非常有趣的结果，就是这些热量盈余并没有造成他们长胖。
So what's the take-home message for your clients? If you overconsume calories and it's from protein, it's very unlikely it will be converted to body fat.
所以这对于我们的客户来说意味着什么呢？如果你多吃的这些热量是来自于蛋白质的话，它让你体重增加，让你长胖的概率是极低的。
Now, the next common question we get from clients is, what about my kidney function? We often hear a myth that higher protein intakes are harmful for the kidneys.
那另外一个经常客户会问我的问题就是，那我的肾脏会不会不好？经常我们会有这样的一个误解，就是如果吃太多蛋白质的话，对我们的肾功能是有不良影响的。
Again, the research here is very clear, despite the myths that we hear online and even unfortunately in some medical practices, but there are no harmful effects of consuming up to 3 grams per kilogram per day of protein for the course of 1 year.
然后呢，我们也看到了这样的研究这个研究呢持续了1年的时间，然后他们让受试者甚至吃到3克每公斤体重每天的这个摄入量，但即使是这么高的摄入量呢，也没有造成肾功能的这个影响。
And so again, the take-home message here is that higher protein diets, if you have healthy functioning kidneys, have no adverse impacts on kidney health.
所以我们的结论就是，即使你吃很多的蛋白质，也不会对肾功能造成不良反应。
Okay, so the biggest loser. What happened to those clients that show the biggest loser in America, where they lost hundreds of pounds over the course of a few months? What happened to them 6 years later?
好，那接下来呢，我们就看看关于超级减肥王这帮人是在几个月之内减掉了上百斤重量的个体，那6年之后，他们的身体究竟发生了什么样的变化？
This graph shows the amount of calories they consumed at the start of the program.
那最左边呢，这条柱是他在开始参加这个计划时候每天会摄入的热量总量。
The red bar shows the weight loss from the baseline to the end of competition going down.
而红色的线呢，是他们减掉的重量在比赛开始和比赛结束的时候的变化趋势。
Sorry, I'll have to redo that bit. I misspoke.
OK，
I'm not sure if you want to. I don't know if you want to make a note on the edit, but I'll say again.
OK，
On this graph, the blue bars represent the client's body weight from the start of the competition to the end of competition.
那蓝色的这个柱呢，它代表了客户的这个体重啊，它在比赛前和比赛后的体重由高到低的这样的一个变化。
Now, from the middle, the end of competition, to the far right, 6 years later, we see the weight go back up.
那从中间这个蓝柱呢，到右边6年后的这个蓝柱，我们可以看到他们的体重恢复了很多。
They've regained the 100 pounds or so that they lost during the competition.
所以他大概从回复到6年以后，他的体重又增加回去有100多磅。
Why did this happen?
那为什么会出现这种现象呢？
Well, you can see the red line is the metabolic rate. Again, 2/3 of all of our calories are burned from our metabolism.
那红线呢，就说明了这个问题的真相啊。红线是我们的静息代谢水平，大家要记得，我们之前提到静息代谢，它每天所消耗的热量占到我们总热量支出大概66%。
Now, it's normal when you're losing weight to see the red bar go down from baseline to end of competition. That's a normal response to weight loss.
那通常当我们体重降低的时候，你的静息代谢水平也会降低，这个是正常的一个规律和现象。
However, what's not normal is from the end of competition to 6 years later, we see the metabolism stays very low. And this is a take-home message for the protein intake. If we can consume the right amount of protein, we can get the metabolism back running the way that it should.
那另外一个不正常的现象是什么呢？就是在比赛结束后一直到6年的这个时间点，红色这条线代表它的静息代谢水平一直处于一个比较低的、没有增加的这样的一个状态。那如果我们在这个期间内让受试者会吃更多蛋白质的话，也许他们的代谢能力会有一个恢复。
The Biggest Loser study also reinforces that we need to teach our clients the habits so they can continue to do these strategies in the long term.
那关于超级减肥王呢，还有一点是总结出来的经验教训，就是我们需要让参加完减重计划的人，学会让这些习惯、运动，包括饮食的方式维持，以和他的生活进行一些融合。
All right, so we've looked at protein intake for health and longevity, 1.2 grams per kilogram per day as a minimum.
好，我们刚才已经提到了，如果你想要改善健康和整体的健康寿命的情况的话，1.2克每公斤体重每天的蛋白质摄入是我们推荐的一个量。
We've looked at protein intake for weight loss, where the intake is between 1.2 grams to 2.2 grams per kilogram per day.
而当我们去讨论减脂的时候，我们推荐的剂量呢是1.2克到2.2克每公斤体重每天。
Now let's look at protein for athletic performance.
好，接下来我们看看与运动表现相关的蛋白质摄入。
The first question we need to answer is, what is an athlete?
那首先我们要回答的一个问题就是运动员是什么样的人？
Recreational athletes can be very fit, but they're not in the same category as a professional athlete or runner.
有一些休闲组的这种精英级别的跑步选手、运动员，他们可能看上去是挺健壮的，但是跟真正的职业的精英级的跑步选手相比的话，是完全两码事。
That's why it's important to know your population. Are you working with an elite recreational athlete or runner, or are you working with an Olympic level or national level athlete?
所以对于我们来说，了解客户的类型是非常重要的。你究竟是在跟精英级的休闲组跑步选手、业余跑步选手在合作，还是呢你的客户是国家队级的或者是奥运级的这种比赛的选手
？Because a common mistake that we find, and this is again we see in runners, so people training for a marathon. Marathon training involves a lot of exercise. And so in that energy balance equation, the energy out increases dramatically.
这里呢通常存在这样一种误区，就是业余的跑步选手呢会以专业的选手的膳食和补充来要求自己。其实在你比如说去准备一个马拉松的时候，你会有大量的这个能量的消耗，我们确实是需要补充，但不一定像专业选手那样去补充。
Now, with energy intake increasing dramatically, we should see weight loss, but oftentimes we don't. And the reason is because clients too often fuel like a real elite athlete and not like a recreational athlete.
那虽然呢，业余选手在进行训练的时候，他会大大的增加我们的能量支出，但是我们看不到减重的效果，这是为什么呢？因为这些业余选手他把自己当成专业选手一样来进行能量的补充。
So let's take a look here at protein intake for endurance athletes. We often think of protein in muscle. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's fine, it's fine. You can go on.
We often think of protein for muscles, but protein is even more important for endurance athletes.
接下来我们来看看对于耐力运动员来讲，蛋白质有什么作用。那通常呢，我们都会认为对于力量型的运动员，蛋白质很重要的，但其实对于耐力型运动员，蛋白质同样重要。
There's 3 important areas to consider.
这里有3点需要考虑。
The first is protecting muscle. The longer duration exercise bouts of endurance training will start to break down more muscle. Therefore, protein is very important for the endurance athlete.
那第一个呢，就是通过摄入蛋白质可以防止耐力型运动员的肌肉流失。当耐力型运动员进行长时间的训练和运动的时候，身体会更倾向于让蛋白质来自于肌肉的这些蛋白质进行供能。
Number 2 is, again, the volume of training, the amount of training you need to do for an endurance athlete, and the intensity can start to reduce your immune system function. So you're more likely to catch colds and flus. Protein can help protect against that.
那当我们考虑到耐力型运动员，他们通常的比赛或训练的强度和时间容量尤其是容量是比较大的。这种大容量的训练呢，会降低运动员的免疫能力，他们会更容易得流感或者是得感冒，而蛋白质的补充恰恰可以去增强我们的免疫力。
The third factor is recovery. Recovery for endurance athletes is crucial so that they can show up every day and train in order to make the progressions they need to be fit. And so protein again plays a key role in recovery.
那第3点呢，就是关于身体的恢复。耐力型运动员他们最好是可以快速的恢复，然后每一天都进行相应的这个训练。而蛋白质的补充对于身体的恢复是至关重要的。
So how much protein do endurance athletes need? Well, the general recommendation, again, is this minimum of 1.2 grams per kilogram per day, up to approximately 2 grams per kilogram per day. So if you're working with an athlete and they're performing well and they feel healthy at 1.4, then that's fine. If they're struggling with their recovery or immunity or performance, you can increase up to that 2 grams per kilogram mark.
那对于耐力型运动员呢，我们推荐的范围是1.2到2.0克每公斤体重每天，这个要基于每个人各自不同的情况来在区间当中进行选择。比如说这个运动员吃1.4克，大概已经够了。但是如果你发现运动员的整个免疫状态啊和他的恢复能力相对比较低的话，你甚至可以吃到接近2克的这个量也没问题。
Now, what about ultra marathon, ultra endurance athletes? So these are long, 100-kilometer, 50-mile, 100-mile exercise bouts. If you
那接下来的话，我们来看看对于一些超长耐力型、超长距离的这个运动员有什么样的影响。那所谓的超长耐力呢，通常他们的比赛的距离可能会达到100公里，甚至是100、150英里这样的距离。
If you or your clients train for ultra endurance events, the minimum goes up to 1.6 grams per kilogram per day.
如果你或者你的客户在进行这种超长距离的耐力型运动训练的时候，我们的最低摄入水平提高到了1.6克每公斤体重每天。
Now, that's the minimum, and the range can increase all the way up to 2.5 grams per kilogram per day. And again, that's because there's so much training, so many miles involved in getting ready for the event.
而这个范围的上限其实也被提高了，它会达到2.5克每公斤体重每天。这些呢都是因为这一类运动它过长的时间或过大的距离所造成的。
All right, let's switch gears now to the athlete who wants to gain size, gain muscle mass.
好，那我们接下来看看对于要肌肥大的这群人，他们需要摄入多少蛋白质。
This is what we refer to as muscle hypertrophy.
我们通常把这个叫做肌肥大。
So if the most important thing to gain size is the total calories you consume in a day.
那对于增加你的这个强壮程度、肌肉量的话，一个很重要的、最至关重要的因素就是你每一天所吃的总的热量。
Protein is also very important, but if you have a client who's struggling, remember, calories, the total calories you eat in a day is the most important thing to gain size, of course, along with exercise.
除了训练之外呢，我们需要关注的，如果你想要自己的形体变得更强壮，每一天的总摄入量是除了蛋白质摄入之外最重要的一个因素。
So to maximize your muscle mass gains, right? You're working out in the gym, you're exercising, but to maximize your gains, you must be in a caloric excess.
所以如果你想要最大限度的去增加你的肌肉量，你必须每一天都有热量盈余。
So how much protein for hypertrophy, for building muscle mass? Well, 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram per day is the target area. So again, just a little bit more than that health and longevity mark that we had previously.
那对于想要肌肥大的人群呢，我们推荐的范围是1.6到2.2克每公斤体重每天。那当然，这个也是因人而异的，你可以在范围内选择较低或较高的一个数值。
Now, is there a sweet spot? Is there a certain area that's simple to remember and will provide you with most of the benefits?
那对于蛋白质的摄入量有没有一个最佳的摄入点呢？就是这个点我们大部分人都可以用，并且它非常容易记忆。
The sweet spot is 1.6 grams per kilogram per day.
那这个点就是1.6克每公斤体重每天。
So again, to summarize, if all you remember from today's talk is that for general health and longevity, the minimum is 1.2 grams per kilogram per day, and that for athletes and building muscle, the minimum is 1.6 grams per kilogram per day. That is tremendous.
好，我们来稍微总结一下。 如果说你的目标是改善整体的健康和健康寿命的话，它的推荐值是1.2克每公斤体重每天。那如果你是一个有运动爱好的，希望提升自己的运动表现，无论是力量型的还是耐力型的运动，我们都推荐1.6克每公斤每天的蛋白质摄入量。
Another concept that's important for athletes is the idea of protein pacing.
那另外一个对于运动员来说很重要的概念呢，是我们补充蛋白质的节律。
And this means that once your client consistently hits the total amount of protein they need in a day, the next important area is to space it out, divide it out evenly throughout the day.
那我们提到2个很关键的点，第一个呢是你需要让你的运动员每天吃够足够的总量，第二点呢就是我们需要让这个足够的总量在一天当中均匀的进行摄入。
And again, reminder for the athlete, we are aiming for a minimum of 20 grams of protein per serving.
一个参考的值呢，就是我们最少要让运动员每一餐吃够20克的蛋白质。
What about protein supplements?
那最后我们来看看蛋白质的补剂相关内容。
Protein supplements can be a very convenient and helpful way to achieve your daily protein intake.
蛋白质补剂呢，其实是一种非常便宜并且方便的方式，让我们获取每天所必需的蛋白质。
However, certain protein supplements get extra coverage in the media, and one in particular is a BCAA supplement, a supplement to help build muscle.
那在众多的蛋白质补剂当中呢，有一些是特别受到人们关注的，其中之一就是支链氨基酸。
BCAAs are made up of branched chain amino acids. These are part of the essential amino acid group, and they're made up of leucine, isoleucine, and valine.
那这一类呢，氨基酸它属于支链氨基酸，同时呢，它也是我们的必需氨基酸，包括亮氨酸、异亮氨酸和缬氨酸。
Now, if you're achieving the daily intake and you're dividing it through the day, do you need BCAAs as an extra supplement?
那假设我们前面提到的2个对于蛋白质补充的原则你都满足了，你吃的总量是够的，并且你每一天的这个摄入也是比较平均的摄入，在这种情况下，你究竟还需要摄入支链氨基酸作为补剂吗？
The short answer is no.
简单来讲就是不需要。
If you're achieving your daily protein intake, there are no additional benefits from buying a BCAA supplement.
所以当我们已经满足了前面提到的2个条件的话，你吃更多的支链氨基酸并没有获得更多的健康益处。
Now, how much benefit overall would you get from adding a protein supplement to your regime on top of consuming the food?
那最后我们再来看看蛋白质补剂呢会给我们带来哪些其他的一些好处。
Well, research from Rob Morton from Canada, McMaster University, has found that the benefits of protein supplementation were only about 2% for gaining muscle for athletes.
那这里有一篇来自于Rob Morton 的，来自于加拿大的一个研究这个研究说明了什么呢？我们的补剂仅仅提供了2%的这种肌肉增长的贡献。
Now, for athletes, 2% is still very important, but it's nowhere near the importance of training, of lifting the weights, of doing the work to achieve the fitness.
对于精英级的运动员来说，这2%的差异也许是很关键的，但是这个2%的比例，如果相较于抗阻训练这种作用简直就是微乎其微的。
Now, common areas of confusion are around soy protein and the effects on testosterone levels.
那在蛋白质补充方面呢，还有这样的一些迷思和困惑，就是大豆蛋白会降低睾酮的水平吗？
Now, again, on social media and online, we may hear claims that soy protein has effects on testosterone levels in men and estrogen levels, but this is untrue. The actual scientists who look at all of the research in what's called a meta-analysis have found no effects on testosterone and estrogen levels in men and women.
那通常呢，人们会认为大豆补剂当中这种异黄酮它是类雌激素的，会降低这个雄性激素和睾酮的水平。但其实通过我们现在看到的这篇原分析的论文，作者得出的结论是，它并不会产生太大的影响。
Now, lastly, let's talk about nutrient timing. Does it matter when you consume that protein supplement around exercise?
那接下来我们探讨一下的是营养补充的时机是不是有一个非常神奇的时间段，我们通过这个时间段来补充的话，会达到更好的效果。
Well, when we talk about, sorry, I'll go back. Again, if you achieve your daily protein intake and you divide it through the day, you don't need to be worried about having your protein shake directly after you train.
如果说呢，你每一天的摄入总量是够的，而且摄入也是比较平均，每一餐都有，那这个时候在训练后呢，你并不需要去再来一个补剂。
The only time timing is important is if you're training in a fasted state. So if you wake up in the morning, you have no breakfast, and you exercise, that's when it's important to have the protein directly after training.
那唯一的一个需要我们关注在运动后立刻进行补充的情况，就是你是空腹的、饿着肚子的。比如说早上一起来没有吃早饭，然后去训练，训完了之后呢，我们是特别需要进行蛋白质补充的。
So again, to summarize the messages that we've been repeating throughout, the important take-home messages: achieve your daily protein intake. 1.2 grams per kilo per day for health and longevity, a minimum of 1.6 grams per kilo per day for athletes and gaining muscle.
好，我们稍微总结一下。如果你想要改善健康和长寿的话，每天的蛋白质摄入量是 1.2 克每公斤体重。如果你想要通过蛋白质摄入来提升你的运动表现，无论你是力量型的还是耐力型的运动员，我们推荐的是 1.6 克每公斤体重每天。
Number 2 is spread that protein intake out throughout the day and aim for a minimum of 20 grams to 40 grams per serving.
那第二点呢，就是让这些摄入量在一天当中均匀的进行摄入。一个简单的做法就是每一餐饭大概摄入20到40克。
And lastly, aim for a variety of protein sources: fish, chicken, beef, plant-based. The more variety you have, the better quality of not only protein, but also the more micronutrients you'll get in your diet.
还有一点呢，就是我们对于蛋白质类食物的这个来源选择应该尽量的多样化，比如说牛肉、鱼肉、猪肉食物类的蛋白豆类的蛋白等等。这样的话，我们不仅可以获得蛋白质，还可以获得丰富的营养包括矿物质、维生素这些营养素。
So, we've come full circle. What can we learn from Milos, the great wrestler and Olympian?
好，我们又回到了最开始的这个话题。我们从 Milo 的身上学到了什么？他作为一个非常传奇的这个古希腊的摔跤手。
We can learn that consistency is the key to success. So whether it's your protein intake, nutrition, weight loss, or exercise, making a small change and doing that consistently every week, every month, for the whole year is the secret, is the best way to achieve success.
我们从 Milo 的这个故事当中呢，会看到坚持、持续不变的、持续不停的去改变的力量。无论你的改变有多小，我们需要让它一点点去发生，并且不停的去发生。每一周都会有一点改变，是运动也好，是饮食补充也好，是行为改变也好，这个才会让我们获得最终的长久的以及很大的成就。
We see this in the story of Milo, because when he was young, he used to carry a small calf up the mountain. Every day he carried the calf, and as the calf grew bigger and bigger, Milo grew stronger and stronger. And so consistency was the secret for him becoming a world-class athlete and champion.
那就像 Milo 的故事一样啊，他在小的时候呢，就扛着这头牛，每一天都上山。那随着这个牛的长大，他自己也逐渐的成长，他每一天还是依旧扛着这头牛去上山。那最后牛长得很大的时候，他也变成了一个很强壮的成年人。所以始终如一的进行坚持训练以及营养补充，是我们成为顶尖级运动员、成为奥运级运动员选手的一个必备的条件。
I hope you enjoyed this talk. If you want more information, you can listen to my podcast, the Performance Nutrition Podcast, totally free.
希望大家喜欢今天课程的内容。如果你还对进一步的内容感兴趣的话，大家可以去听我的这个在线的音频。音频节目呢是完全免费的。
If you enjoyed the content from today's talk, it's taken from my new book, Peak. And we see some quotes from leaders in the field regarding the book.
如果大家对我的课程内容有更多的兴趣的话，欢迎大家去阅读这本书，这是我新写的。然后左边呢也有这个书的一个很厉害的教练他的推荐语他是一个骨科医生，并且是非常有名的一位医生。
These last slides, maybe I'll speak to this one and then we can stop for the questions. For those of you who are interested in more information on nutrition and athletes, we do have continuing education courses that will be launched in the fall of 2020.
好，如果大家还希望有更多的课程参与的话，我们也有继续教育的体系在2020年的秋天会跟大家见面，欢迎大家到网站进行访问。
Now, again, I'd like to thank everyone for listening in. Would like to definitely a big thank you to my translator for the wonderful translation. And now we will take any questions from listeners.
好，那感谢大家参与我们今天的课程也感谢翻译同事的参与。大家有什么样的问题可以提出来。Okay, well done.
All right, man. Well done. Geez, so you did well.